Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about something that separates the average from the extraordinary. It's not talent, it's not luck, it's not even opportunity. It's the willingness to grow when it's uncomfortable and the patience to wait when it would be easier to settle. Most people don't fall because they don't have enough potential. They fall because they choose comfort when they were called to grow. You see, comfort is appealing. It tells you, stay here, you're fine. It offers ease, familiarity, and control. And we like control, don't we? We like knowing what's next. We like routine. We like predictability. But comfort is a liar. It pretends to be a refuge, but it slowly becomes a prison. 80% of people will live their entire lives avoiding the very things that would have set them free. They won't risk rejection, so they never step out and try. They won't embrace discipline, so they stay bound by the same habits year after year. They won't deal with the deeper parts of themselves, the fear, the pride, the shame. So they put on masks and call it personality. They call it realism when it's just spiritual laziness. And the greatest tragedy is that they settle. They settle for mediocrity while whispering, "At least I'm comfortable." Let me tell you something. God did not make you for comfort. He made you for obedience. And obedience often feels like death, like carrying a cross, because it is death. It's death to self, to ego, to control, to the flesh that says, "Give me what I want now." Comfort keeps the flesh alive. Growth crucifies it. The world says, "Find yourself." The gospel says, "Deny yourself." And that denial, that surrender, that willingness to go into the unknown, to be refined by fire, to be misunderstood and overlooked, that's where growth happens. But only a few ever go there. Why? Because it's hard, because it costs something, because it breaks you before it builds you. And the 80% aren't willing to pay the price. You want to know why some people have shallow faith? Because they've built their lives on comfort instead of conviction. They've constructed spiritual lives that require no sacrifice, no repentance, no real submission. And it works until life collapses, until the storm hits. Then they discover that comfort doesn't hold you up. Only truth does. We say we want to grow, but are we willing to be uncomfortable long enough for God to change us? Or are we just looking for inspiration, a quick emotional high, a little spiritual sugar to sweeten our day? The 80% go from conference to conference, book to book, podcast to podcast, hoping something will change, but they never endure the furnace of real transformation. They want change without cost. They want fruit without pruning. They want resurrection without crucifixion. Some of you have been praying for breakthrough, but you're avoiding the process that brings it. You want strength, but won't lift the weight. You want wisdom, but won't sit in silence. You want maturity, but won't stay when it's hard. My friend, that's not growth. That's avoidance dressed up as faith. You're not stuck because God forgot you. You're stuck because you keep choosing the soft way when He's calling you to the narrow one. Don't get me wrong. Comfort isn't always wrong. There are seasons of rest, of peace, of still waters. But if your life is built around always seeking what feels easy, you're not following Christ. You're following your own comfort. And your comfort will never lead you to your calling. Do you know how many people settle for a relationship that doesn't challenge them to grow spiritually because it's easy? Do you know how many people stay in a job where they feel dead inside because it pays well and doesn't ask for faith? Do you know how many people stay spiritually immature because growth would mean confronting their pride, confessing their sin, and letting go of their image? Listen to me. Growth is not convenient. It is rarely fast. It is rarely seen by others, but it is holy. It is necessary, and it is what separates the 80% who merely exist from the 20% who live with fire in their bones. So I ask you, what's your threshold for discomfort? How quickly do you run when things don't go your way? How often do you retreat the moment you're misunderstood? The moment God feels distant? The moment your plans fall apart? Because if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, you're not ready to grow. And if you're not growing, you're drifting. There is no neutral in the kingdom of God. Some of you right now, you're in that place of decision. You know God is calling you deeper. You feel the tug, the conviction, the ache, but you're hesitating. You're thinking about what you'll have to give up, what others will think, how long it might take. And comfort whispers, stay where you are. This is good enough. But deep down, you know it's not. You know you were made for more than just being liked, being safe, being entertained. You were made to bear fruit. You were made to carry a cross. You were made to shine in the dark. You were made to know God, not just casually, but intimately. The difference between those who grow and those who don't is not intelligence, resources, or talent. It's surrender. It's the willingness to say, even if it costs me, even if it's painful, even if it's lonely, I will obey. That's what sets the 20% apart. They're not superhuman, they just refuse to bow to comfort. They've counted the cost, and they said yes anyway. The 80% will spend their lives watching others rise and wonder why they did. They'll say they were just lucky, or they had more time, or God must have given them more. No, friend, they simply endured when you backed down. They stayed when you walked away. They kept digging when you dropped the shovel. Don't be surprised when comfort offers you everything but the thing you truly long for. It will give you security but steal your calling. It will give you applause but rob you of anointing. It will give you ease but hollow out your and in the end you'll look back and realize you traded growth for nothing more than a feeling. But it doesn't have to end that way. The choice is still yours. Choose growth. Choose obedience. Choose the path that doesn't make sense to the world but leads to the heart of God. Because one day the fire will fall, and only those who laid themselves on the altar will burn with it. When we talk about comfort, we often think of it as something harmless, even necessary. After all, who doesn't want peace, ease, and security in life? But here's the reality. Comfort can become a prison if we're not careful. It's that soft cushion that lulls us into complacency, that gentle whisper convincing us to stay where we are, even when growth is beckoning us forward. Comfort feels safe, familiar, and painless, but it often hides a costly truth. Comfort can kill our potential. I want to be clear, there is a time for rest. God Himself rested after creating the world. Rest is essential, but rest is different from settling into comfort and refusing to move forward. The danger comes when comfort becomes a barrier between you and the life God has called you to live. When comfort becomes the default, the preferred choice, you begin to shrink instead of expand, to wither instead of flourish. You see, growth is not comfortable, it's uncomfortable. Growth pushes against what you know, what you're used to, and challenges the status quo. Growth stretches your limits and requires sacrifice. Growth asks you to face fear, to confront weakness, and to step into uncertainty. And when you choose comfort over growth, you're choosing ease over purpose, safety over destiny, and immediate gratification over long-term transformation. Many people never experience true growth because they are afraid of discomfort. They're afraid of failing, afraid of rejection, afraid of the unknown. So they stay in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, or spiritual routines that don't challenge them. They settle for good enough rather than God's best, and in doing so, they rob themselves of the fullness of life that God intends. Think about it. Comfort often comes disguised as convenience. It whispers, "Why rock the boat? Why take the risk? Why step out of your comfort?" And so you stay where you are. But what you don't realize is that every moment spent in comfort at the expense of growth is a moment lost from your God-given potential. The choice to pursue growth means you must say no to comfort. It means you must embrace uncertainty and discomfort as necessary parts of the journey. It means you must be willing to fail, to get up again, and to keep moving forward even when the path is hard. Growth is messy, it's challenging, and it requires resilience, but the rewards are beyond measure. God didn't create you to live small, safe, or comfortable. He created you to live fully, to grow in character, faith, and purpose. When you choose growth, you're saying, "God, I trust you more than my comfort. I believe that what you have for me is worth the struggle." This is the posture of faith. It's the posture of those who understand that comfort is temporary but growth is eternal. The world around us often celebrates comfort and immediate success, but the kingdom of God values perseverance, endurance, and transformation. The 80% choose comfort because it's easier to follow the crowd, to stay where it's familiar, but the 20% choose growth because they know that the life of faith is a journey of becoming more like Christ, becoming who God has called them to be. When you embrace growth over comfort, you open yourself to the refining work of God. You allow Him to prune away the dead branches in your life, to remove the things that hold you back, and to shape you into a vessel fit for His purposes. This process can be painful, but it is necessary. It leads to a life that is vibrant, fruitful, and full of meaning. There's a reason Jesus taught about the narrow path and the hard way that leads to life. It's because true growth and true life come through challenges, sacrifice, and perseverance. Comfort is a trap when it becomes an excuse not to grow. Don't let it fool you. Don't let the fear of discomfort keep you from stepping into God's best. You were made for more than comfort. You were made for growth, for challenge, for transformation. And when you choose growth over comfort, you align yourself with God's plan, a plan that may be difficult but is always good. So I urge you today, don't settle for comfort. Don't let the easy path steal your destiny. Choose growth. Embrace the discomfort. Trust that God is with you every step of the way. And remember, the greatest rewards in life come not from comfort, but from courage, faith, and growth. You know, there's something deep in the human heart that hates to wait. It almost feels unnatural. We live in a time where everything is built for speed, fast food, fast internet, fast success. Everything is about how quickly you can get it, how soon you can see results, how instantly your desires can be fulfilled. But listen to me, the things of God don't come microwaved. They are not instant. They are not cheap. They are not handed out like snacks at a party. They are forged in the fire of waiting. Waiting is one of the most misunderstood aspects of the Christian life. Most people see it as punishment. They think if they're waiting, they must have done something wrong. Or worse, they think God forgot them. But nothing could be further from the truth. God doesn't make mistakes with timing. He's never early. He's never late. He's perfect. And sometimes the most loving thing He can do for you is make you wait, because the waiting exposes your heart. It reveals what you really believe, strips away the noise and distractions, and forces you to deal with your motives, your fears, your idols. But people hate that. So what do? They run. They manufacture their own timing. They create their own path. They kick open doors that God never opened, and they think they've won. But you know what they've really done? They've built their lives on a shaky foundation, and it will crack the moment pressure comes, because they didn't wait. They didn't trust. They didn't believe that what God had was worth the patience. You know who waits? The one who knows they're valuable. You don't see kings and queens chasing scraps. You don't see someone who knows their identity lowering themselves just to feel busy. The one who waits is the one who knows what's being prepared is worth it, and that they are worth it. The person who waits knows that rushing ahead won't bring peace, and settling early won't bring satisfaction. Some of you are waiting right now, and it's hard. It's painful. You feel like you're being left behind. You see others getting opportunities, stepping into relationships, reaching milestones, and here you are still in the same place, still praying, still fasting, still listening, still obeying, and you wonder, God, did you forget me? Let me tell you plainly, He did not forget you. He is forming you. What's happening in the wait isn't a waste. God is doing more in your silence than in the noise of the crowd. He's building in you the strength to carry the thing He's preparing to give you. You see, God's gifts are heavy. His callings are weighty. His assignments aren't for the fragile or the unprepared. And if you receive something before your character is ready, the blessing will crush you. The spotlight will expose you. The very thing you prayed for will become the thing that breaks you. Not because God was unkind, but because you were unwilling to wait for the process. I've seen people grab marriages before they were healed. I've seen people grab platforms before they were sanctified. I've seen people run into ministry before they learned how to pray. They wanted the outcome, not the obedience. They wanted to be seen, not to be shaped. And now they live burdened by what they begged for, because they didn't wait. But the 20%, those who wait, they are different. They might look like nothing to the world. They might not have the biggest following. They might not be loud, but they are steady. They are anchored. They are refined. They walk with a quiet power that only comes from time in the wilderness. They don't move until God says. They don't open doors He hasn't opened. They don't act on impulse. They act on instruction. And that's what the world doesn't understand. People think waiting is inactivity, but it's not. Waiting is warfare. Waiting is spiritual training. Waiting is the gym of the soul. It's where your muscles are built. Your spirit is sharpened. Your motives are purified. It's where you learn to hear God's whisper, not just follow the noise. It's where you die to your will and rise in His strength. And do you know what's most dangerous about not waiting? It's subtle. The enemy won't always tempt you with something evil. He'll tempt you with something almost right, almost in season, almost aligned, just close enough to God's promise to make you bite, but not close enough to bear the weight of His blessing. If you don't wait, you'll accept what looks good instead of what is God. I've watched people destroy their destiny, not because they lacked opportunity, but because they lacked patience. They couldn't bear the tension of the unknown. They needed to feel in control. So they made decisions out of fear, and fear always leads to bondage. But waiting, true, surrendered, humble waiting, leads to freedom. Because when God brings the breakthrough, when He opens the door, when He says now you'll walk into it with peace, you'll walk into it with authority, you'll walk into it with no regret, because you'll know this wasn't me, this was God. And if you've waited, truly waited, you'll never take it for granted. The person who's waited for years to see the promise of God knows how to steward it when it arrives. They don't waste it, they don't flaunt it, they worship with it, they serve with it, they lay it back at the feet of Jesus, because they know it was never about them. Don't let the enemy lie to you. Waiting is not failure. Waiting is not weakness. Waiting is a sign that you trust God more than yourself. And trust me, He will honor that. He will reward that. He sees it all. Every prayer, every tear, every lonely moment, every quiet act of obedience when no one was watching. He sees it, and He does not forget. So if you are in the waiting, stay there. Stay planted. Stay pure. Stay faithful. Keep your eyes on Him. Don't look to the left or to the right. Don't compare your season to theirs. Don't let the noise of the 80% pull you out of your posture. What God has for you is worth the wait, and you are worth the wait. When the time comes, and the promise unfolds, and everything makes sense, you'll realize it wasn't just about what you were waiting for. It was about who you were becoming while you waited. There's a truth I want you to hear deep in your heart today. Your worth matters, not the worth the world tries to tell you about, not the worth measured by numbers, likes, titles, or paychecks. No, I'm talking about a worth that comes from being known, created, and treasured by the Creator Himself. It's a worth that cannot be earned or lost by what you do or don't do. And when you understand this worth, it changes. You see, a lot of people make choices from a place of insecurity. They make decisions out of fear. They settle for less than God's best because they don't know they deserve better. They stay stuck in toxic relationships because they don't believe they're worthy of love that builds up rather than tears down. They settle in careers that drain their souls because they don't believe their talents or passions have value. And in the spiritual realm, they settle for shallow faith because they don't think they're worthy of the deeper things of God. But here's the thing, the moment you begin to know your true worth, you start to live differently. You start to say no to what is easy and yes to what is. You begin to walk away from comfort zones that enslave you and step into uncomfortable places where growth happens. You start to believe that you deserve more, not in a prideful way, but in a God-honoring way. You recognize that the good gifts God has for you are not just for somebody else, but for you, because He made you in His image and called you precious. Many people rush into things because they don't believe they're worthy of waiting for the best. They settle for a relationship that drains them because they think they don't deserve someone who will truly cherish and honor them. They accept jobs that crush their spirit because they don't believe they're capable of something great. Spiritually, they settle for a shallow walk because they don't think they're worthy of deeper intimacy with God. This is why so many fall into the trap of comfort. Comfort feels safe when you're unsure of your worth. Comfort feels like an easy substitute when you don't believe you're worth the struggle of growth. But the 20%, those who wait and know their worth, they don't settle. They refuse to be anyone's second choice, anyone's convenience, or anyone's fault. They know their value is not based on how the world views them, but on how God sees them. This worth isn't about arrogance or entitlement. It's about recognition of God's hand on their lives and the confidence that comes with being a child of the King. When you know your worth, waiting becomes an act of faith, not frustration. You don't rush because you understand that the best things take time. You don't chase after quick fixes or easy solutions because you know that what God has planned for you is better than anything you can grasp on your own. You're willing to endure the struggle, the pruning, the refining, because you believe the outcome is worth. Knowing your worth also means you don't let others define you. The world will try to put a price tag on your life through comparisons, criticisms, or outright rejection. But when you know who you are in God, you're not shaken by the world's opinion. You don't compromise your values to fit in
or to be accepted. You don't accept less than what God has for you just because it's easier or more popular. This is hard. It's a fight. It takes courage to stand firm in your worth when everything around you screams that you're not enough. It takes humility to acknowledge that your worth comes from God alone and not from your accomplishments or failures. It takes faith to believe that God sees you, the real you, and calls you beloved, even when you feel broken, unworthy, or invisible. But that faith produces fruit. When you know your worth, you start to make choices that honor God in yourself. You start to set healthy boundaries. You start to seek out relationships that encourage your growth rather than stunt. You begin to invest your time and energy into things that align with your calling, not just what's convenient or comfortable. You refuse to live beneath your potential because you understand that God has plans for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future filled with hope. There's a story I want you to imagine. Someone who waited, not out of fear or laziness, but because they knew their worth was worth protecting. They didn't rush into anything that wasn't God's best. They refused to be swayed by the impatience of the crowd or the pressure of the moment. And because they waited, they stepped into a blessing that was far greater than they could have imagined. That blessing didn't just change their circumstances, it transformed their identity. It taught them what it means to be valued, respected, and loved as God intended. You may be in that place right now, waiting. Maybe it's a relationship you're holding on to with an open hand, not settling for less than God's best, because you know you're worth more. Maybe it's a job or a ministry calling you feel stirred by, but haven't yet stepped into because you want to be sure it's right. Maybe it's a season of spiritual growth, where you're learning to see yourself through God's eyes, instead of your own. Whatever it is, don't lose hope. Your worth is not determined by your speed or your success. It's determined by the one who made you and loves you beyond measure. And when you begin to live from that place, when you know your worth and refuse to settle for less, everything changes. You become part of the 20% who don't just chase comfort but chase God's best for their lives. You become a person who knows that waiting isn't wasted time, but holy preparation. You become a person who walks in confidence, not arrogance, in humility, not pride, in hope, not fear. So I want to challenge you today. Know your worth, know it deeply, let it shape your decisions, your relationships, your ambitions, your faith. Don't let the world's definition of value pull you into settling for less. Stand firm in the truth that you are loved, you are chosen, and you are enough because of who God says you are. And when you live like that, you'll find that the wait is not a burden, but a blessing, because you know the worth of what you're waiting for, and the worth of who you are in waiting for. There's a powerful lesson to learn about patience, not just as a passive waiting, but as an active, intentional choice that shapes who we become. Far too often we think of patience as something we endure, a burden to bear, until the next thing comes along. But patience, true patience, is a form of courage. It's the strength to hold on when everything inside of you screams to let go, to move on, to give up. It's the resolve to stay faithful in the small moments, the quiet seasons, the times when progress seems invisible. And this is exactly what separates those who settle for comfort from those who grow into their God-ordained potential. The 80%, they choose comfort because it's easy, because it feels safe, because it's familiar. It cushions the pain of uncertainty and masks the fear of failure. But the 20%, the ones who wait, they have learned to embrace the tension of patience. They understand that growth is not always comfortable. It's often hard, sometimes painful, and it requires a kind of faith that the world doesn't understand. You see, the world will tell you to hurry. Hurry to the next achievement, the next relationship, the next milestone. Hurry to prove your worth. Hurry to secure your future. Hurry to find happiness. But God's kingdom works differently. His timing is perfect, and His ways are often contrary to the world. He calls us to a pace of faith, not franticness. He calls us to wait with expectation, not despair. Waiting requires trust. It requires believing that the delay is not denial, that the silence is not abandonment. Waiting means holding on to God's promises, even when they seem distant. It means worshiping Him in the waiting room, not just on the mountaintop. It means being faithful with what you have now, even when you long for what you don't yet see. This kind of patience is a test of character. It's a refining fire that purifies motives and deepens dependence on God. Those who choose growth over comfort don't just wait, they grow while they wait. They develop their skills, they deepen their faith, they serve others, they prepare themselves for the next season. They don't waste the waiting period, they invest in. You can see this principle in every story of God's people throughout the Bible. Abraham waited decades for the promise of a son. Joseph endured years of prison and rejection before rising to power. David spent years as a shepherd, hiding from a king who wanted to kill him before he was crowned. Each waited, not passively, but actively, growing, trusting, preparing. And you know, it's tempting to look at their stories and think, well, that's them, not me. Their waiting was different. But the truth is, every one of us is called to this same kind of patient endurance. The waiting seasons might look different for you. Maybe it's a waiting for healing, a waiting for direction, a waiting for restoration, or a waiting for opportunity. But the principle is the same. How you wait will determine how you walk in the next chapter. If you choose comfort, if you chase after what feels good and immediate, you risk missing what God has for you. You risk building your life on sand instead of rock. Comfort can lull you into complacency, and complacency can kill your calling. It's easy to settle for less when the cost of growth feels too high, but the cost of settling is even greater, a life that falls short of the abundant, purpose-filled calling God has for you. But the 20%, those who wait, they know the worth of their future. They understand that growth requires sacrifice. They embrace discomfort because they know it leads to transformation. They hold fast to God's promises because their hope is anchored in Him, not in their circumstances. Waiting with intention also means guarding. When you wait for something good, you become a target for discouragement, doubt, and distraction. The enemy will try to steal your joy, shake your faith, and tempt you into settling for less. But when your worth is rooted in God's love and your identity is secure in Christ, you can resist those attacks. You can stand firm, knowing that the waiting is not wasted time, but sacred preparation. There's also a deeper joy that comes from this kind of wait. It's not the joy of instant gratification, but a joy rooted in peace and confidence. It's a joy that comes from knowing you're in the right place at the right time, even if it doesn't feel like. It's a joy that sustains you through trials and prepares you for the blessing that's coming. Let me remind you, growth is a journey, not a destination. It's a process of becoming more like Christ. Patient, humble, faithful, love, and patience is the soil in which all these virtues take root. Without patience, growth withers, but with patience, growth flourishes. So don't be afraid of the waiting. Don't despise the season of preparation. Don't be tempted to trade your calling for comfort. Instead, embrace the tension of waiting with courage and faith. Invest in your character, deepen your trust in God, and remain steadfast in obedience. When you do this, you join the 20% who understand their worth and wait with purpose. You become a living testimony of God's faithfulness, a beacon of hope in a world desperate for it. And one day, when the waiting is over, you'll look back and realize that the hardest season was the one that shaped you the most, and that was worth every moment of patience.